Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. I'm your host, Malynda, and I'm joined by my co-host, Karmel.
Hello, everyone.
And in studio today, again, we have my wonderful husband, John Volk.
I cannot match your energy level.
I know.
Come on.
Any day of my life.
Any day of our lives. I tried to get him to also. Well, sometimes you are above me, but I have to be really tired.
It's only like in private.
That's what I mean. Sometimes you are.
You have to be
Never in
really
public.
low for John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
That
to be
makes sense.
completely depleted for John to be more energetic than I am.
He's awake.
He's awake. He's more energetic than I am. How's everyone's weekend?
It's pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm enjoying
John?
the weather.
Lovely.
The same weekend as mine, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We chilled. We saw, have you seen the movie Midsummer?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh. We just watched it the other day.
Great.
It's fantastic, but it's horrifying.
It's
Well, it's
great.
a horror movie.
John said it's great.
It is great.
That's a lot.
I know, for him.
That's a lot. Okay.
He's specific on the movies he likes. I'm easy to please usually, but it was horrifying. It's about this
Really?
cult in Sweden. That's all.
Oh.
You've seen the
trailer.
Yes.
Got me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm in.
But when you actually realize what's happening and then you get to the end, you're like, yo, this was brilliant.
Based
Okay.
on a true story.
It's not based on a true story. Could you imagine, though?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Midsummer,
We watched it on
okay.
Google Play. So I don't know.
I mean, you can rent it
you
or
can
buy
just rent
or
it,
whatever.
but we rented it and it was fantastic. It was horrifying. It probably was one of
Oh,
the
you saw it at
scariest-
the house. You saw it here.
Yeah, we watched it here.
Oh, okay.
But it was one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. And not like, obviously, it's not like a slasher film type scary. It's like the whole time you're watching
it's
it, you're just
disquieting.
like, it's just like your skin, like, I feel like I was at the edge of my seat and my skin, I just was crawling. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you like kind of that type of stuff,
I do.
it's a good film. I highly recommend it.
I thought it was coming in. So has it gone to the theaters
Oh
already?
yeah, it was this summer. Yeah.
Okay.
In
No.
midsummer.
Okay.
It was midsummer. It actually was. It was
Very
July.
appropriate.
I know.
How appropriate.
But what I want to talk about today, I want to talk about celebrities and celebrities using their voices to speak out in regards to politics or social issues, because we see a lot of people, and specifically on Twitter, because I'm really involved in Twitterverse, and people get really upset when celebrities use their voices to either endorse politicians or get involved in situations or just speak their mind as if they're not regular citizens of the world as well. And I always find it interesting when people are like, for basketball players, just shut up and play, or, obviously Colin Kaepernick, people do is like, just play football, you don't need to get involved with this, or singers, just shut up and sing, blah, 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 blah. And I don't agree with that stance. I think that celebrities, when you have a platform like that you should use your voice to speak out and influence people to do what's right. Now, granted, there are celebrities and public figures that use their voices for not good things, but we'll talk a little bit about that. But I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts about that.
I don't mind it. I don't think the public, I don't like either side of where the public feels like they should say something. I know a lot in the black community feel like a lot of black athletes should say something. I also don't like it when we try to quiet them. I think there's a middle ground to it, but the problem is they're not in a middle ground situation. They're a celebrity of elite status, and economically they're elite. So it's almost like, they have to do something. I honestly don't care either way. You know how I feel about politics.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just don't like the pull and the push of either side, honestly.
Do you think it's kind of one of those things where, like, if you're asked, say something, but if you're not asked, don't say anything?
That's interesting because, like, in my take on it is similar to yours, Karmel, in the sense of these guys or women are people. They're humans, and they have free will. They can do stuff or they cannot say stuff. It's completely up to them. And if you are someone who's just ascended in the stratosphere of public knowledge, you're going to get tweets and notifications and everything that you can respond to or you cannot respond to. It's totally up to you. What's an interesting hypothetical, and I was just thinking about this when you were saying this, is if you have someone who is just incredibly well known and they just don't really speak up, like it, and I'm not going to fault them for that, or that's just how I would approach things. But if it was like a Michael Jordan or something, and there was like video of him walking by and something just awful happened right in front of him, and he just continued to walk by, it's like, well, would we feel like, would you think less of him for not doing that?
I think you would think less of anybody, wouldn't you?
I don't know.
It depends because like we have this society now where people are videotaping something atrocious happening
Yeah.
and they're videotaping it.
Right.
No one thinks about the person is just watching this happen. They're like, I'm being entertained by what happened. Oh, that's tragic. Oh, that's this. But no one says, why don't you put the freaking phone down?
I'm gonna kind of push back on that a little bit because we talked about that woman Heather L. Patton who was just screaming the N-word at CVS, and people are like, why are you videotaping her? Why aren't you punching her in the face? Because I'm sorry, if a person of color punches her in the face, they're the ones going to jail,
Sure.
and she's not going to get punished.
Definitely.
So filming it is allowing you to kind of take the upper hand in the sense of being able to take everything away from the person that is doing the wrongdoing. I get it. And somebody made a joke like, someone was like, why aren't you guys punching these people? And someone's like, well, if you have a GoPro, you can do both. Keep filming and then punch the crap out of them. And I agree with that. We should all be wearing body cams and just handle our business. But I think that that's why, because we know at the end of the day, if a cop comes and we fight back against somebody that's doing something to us, we're the ones that are going to get in trouble.
This is true. So like with Jordan's reference, it's funny because he's always been looked at as a person who's not really taken a lot of stands.
Right. And that's what I was, because he's also like, there's a quote from him that's, Republicans buy shoes too.
Right.
And that's
and it's true.
It.
And when I heard that, and I'm a Bulls fan, so I was always like, wow, kind of torn, but I'm like, it's true. He's there to sell shoes. And then I remember, Barkley's famous one, like, I'm not a role model.
Yeah.
Which is true, but you are.
I mean, he really is.
He isn't. He's not a good one.
Right.
But it's like, people are looking up to you. You don't have a responsibility that you need to be a certain way. True, but people are watching you and emulating you in certain fashions.
Right, and I guess the question that I have is Barkley saying, "I'm not a role model," right?
Mm-hmm.
But if he does step up and speak out on certain issues, but then he stays silent on others, like, is there a perceived double standard there? Are you using, like, is it a sword in one hand, like of your stature in the public, and a shield in the other, where I can just hide and no, I'm a regular citizen, and like, no, I'm speaking out about this particular injustice.
But there's certain things that matter more to certain people. Like, it's impossible. It is physically impossible and mentally impossible to fight for everything.
Yeah.
So and we can talk about the LeBron situation with China, there's a little hypocrisy going on with that, but if he wants to speak up about like Black Lives Matter and all that stuff, but then he takes his other stance with China, it's like, well, he cares about this more because it's actually part of who he is.
Right. So is there a difference then between advocating for something on the one hand and staying silent? Is like, well, they probably didn't see that, or like they're they push their chips in for one particular cause, versus speaking out in the other direction?
It's a good question.
Does that make sense?
I think
no, it does.
I think you have to be able to say, look, this is if someone asks you about it, that's the thing. If someone asks you about it, okay, have an opinion, have an idea, have a thought, suggestions, whatever. But if you're like, this is the thing I'm most passionate about, okay. But like, who was it? Denzel Washington was asked about the media once. And there's a video clip talking about it. And he's like, he says something to the point, like, he doesn't speak up much about anything. But this time someone in the media asked him, I forget what the question was, but he was like, if you have a responsibility as the media to report the news, then do that.
Yeah.
Just now, don't report just one side of it. Don't report all of it. You have a great responsibility.
Yeah. And he said they're also like rushing to just be the first.
Be the first, right.
And not necessarily be right.
Be right.
Yeah.
So then that to me is the classic way of handling that situation. If someone asks you about something you don't necessarily have any stake in the game about, but you have an opinion, okay, you give it and you move on. But then like to expect LeBron to have something to say about China and Hezbollah and like, any kind of foreign diplomat. He doesn't have that. He's not doing that. He's a black guy and he has some black issues he wants to handle. Why does he have to have a statement or a stance on every single thing? Now the China thing has something to do with basketball, so he's tangentially related to it, but it's like,
do we want to, in case people don't know?
Yeah, I was going to say, so
situation?
if you don't know the situation, John, why don't you give them a little overview?
In broad strokes, most people have probably heard about the protests going on in Hong Kong that have gone on for the last few months. Even backing up a little bit further than that, Hong Kong is treated a little bit differently than mainland China because it was a British colony, and for a period of I don't know how many more years before it's effectively it's completely ceded control over to China. They have kind of a special. They're treated a little bit differently. There was some proposed legislation that would extradite people accused of certain crimes from Hong Kong into China, where they don't necessarily have the due process rights or some of the other legal benefits that would be afforded to you if you were in Hong Kong. So there's some human rights abuses or questions that are on the table, and it's provoked lots of protests. Anyway, so we've had some celebrities from mainland China or from other places speak up on either side of that. The general manager of the Houston Rockets, which is an NBA franchise, tweeted something in support of the protesters in Hong Kong. It drew China's ire because NBA is it's a huge market. That China is a huge market for the NBA. And there's substantial financial interest on both sides of there. I think the government of China requested that the commissioner of the NBA punish the general manager of the Rockets. And that didn't happen. The NBA commissioner said, no, we believe in free speech. This guy can say whatever he wants to say. LeBron was asked about the situation, and he said, we should actually pull up the actual language, because like on the face of it, if you just read the text, it doesn't look that bad.
Right. Right.
In the context, it doesn't look quite so rosy.
But when you think, yeah, exactly.
Effectively, what he said was,
because basically there's consequences when you do have freedom of speech, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. And so
which is a true statement.
Which is a true statement. And he said something the equivalent of.
We can look it up, but I mean that's kind of like the
that's
gist
essentially
of
what
he
it
said.
was. But then Hong Kong protesters immediately called his bluff, essentially, and were burning his jersey in the streets, and called him out for the hypocrisy of standing up for certain social rights while ignoring others, or actually speaking to the other side. And conservative columnists were quick to comment on this guy's financial interests in China,
right,
and putting that behind everything. So that's an interesting take.
I think for me, just when he commented, it just felt like he wasn't as educated as he should have been. You have the quote pulled up. So what exactly did he say?
So he said, this is the quote. We all talk about this freedom of speech. Yes, we do all have freedom of speech, but at times there are ramifications for the negative that can happen when you're not thinking about others and you're only thinking about yourself. I don't want to get into a word or a sentence feud with Daryl Morey, who's the GM of the Rockets, but I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand, and he spoke, and so many people could have been harmed, not only financially, but physically, emotionally, spiritually. So just be careful of what we tweet and what we say and what we do, even though, yes, we do have freedom of speech, but there can be a lot of negative that comes with that too. And
so to me, all that says is that he's kind of has a distorted reality, because he is rich, he is famous, and when something's messing with his money, then it's an issue. It doesn't matter what the situation is.
That doesn't even but that quote taken out of context, that doesn't even tell me that. That tells me look, you speaking from someone who is in the public knowledge, right?
Yeah.
People pay attention to what you say.
Right.
That's all that tells me, honestly.
Right.
Which, in my mind, it's interesting that he's even saying that in the first place, because knowing how poorly that came off.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like no. Now you are venturing a quote in this. You have raised your hand, and you've put yourself into this forum.
Right.
I guess what I read a couple days later, and I read it on reputable sites, but I don't know because I haven't really looked into it, was that, and this is, it cuts against what I just said, which is that LeBron talked to the NBA commissioner and asked, well, why aren't you punishing the general manager of the Rockets for saying that? Which is bad.
That is bad.
Yeah, that's weird.
But I'm saying certain celebrities, I feel like in those situations, it's just about his money right now.
Yeah, I mean that's tough to say, but honestly it should be. But don't. It's weird because they're asking LeBron, And because LeBron has taken stances before, they're not asking James Harden, who's as equally as popular in the NBA right now. They're not asking Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're asking LeBron because he's had stances regarding social issues before. So LeBron does have to do better. He has to do better than that. Mm-hmm. That is on him.
How does he come off, like, putting those two things in context, which is he harmed by speaking out so much in favor of social rights before? And then this one, which is just like, it doesn't look good in my mind.
Well, yeah, because I mean,
because you can totally, again, sorry to cut you off, but like, it's totally like, there are certain things that I care about and other things that I care about, but not in the same way. It's just, I wouldn't attend a rally for certain things.
For sure. But that's what I'm saying. When he talks about like black issues in this country, those actually don't affect him. Mm-hmm. They don't. You know, he's a rich black man that is a celebrity in the United States. He probably won't get pulled over by the cops because everybody knows his face. Mm-hmm. He's not just a regular old tall black guy walking down the street. Right. So it's easier actually for him to speak out about that because those aren't going to affect anything. This is affecting his money, and he doesn't care that it actually is the same kind of social justice situation for what he is speaking out.
Right. Against. Or the other thing is, yes, it can go the other way too, which is he won't be harmed by this stuff by speaking out.
Right.
But that's all the more reason that he doesn't have to speak out.
Right.
Because it doesn't affect him. You know what I mean? So like by him actually saying, I stand with Colin Kaepernick or something, when he does that stuff, then that will actually affect his bottom line. Mm-hmm. You would think, because then, okay, well, those Republicans who, hate the fact that Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem won't be buying LeBron stuff either, right?
Right. So like, I don't think that's going to affect his paycheck, though. It's not going to affect what he gets for his salary in the NBA.
It's an endorsement.
Do you think it would?
Endorsement-wise, it will. But of course, it won't. NBA money. NBA money.
Yeah, that's true. That's
true.
So,
so the NBA money is affected more by this situation with China.
Yeah.
And then his Colin Kaepernick stance, that's more as endorsement money. Mm-hmm. I think what probably would have been the best choice for LeBron is for him to just honestly play ignorant.
Right.
I just found out about this. Yeah. I know Daryl Morey has before said such and such, yada yada, and I have a strong feel for social issues. Let me get some more information, and I'll gladly talk about it. Mm-hmm. Versus just kind of just going off like he did. I think, and LeBron does have a tendency. If you even watch his show on HBO, he tends to ramble. He likes to talk. He likes to go off.
Right.
So he should have just pulled back on that one and say, let me get more information about it. But it is what it is.
So there are a few other celebrities that come to mind when I think of them kind of taking very public stances. Recently, Taylor Swift, not my favorite artist, and I don't dislike her, but don't love her, whatever. She recently spoke out, and she said something that I actually laughed out loud about. She said the reason that she didn't speak out about things before is because she didn't know that she was able to if they didn't actually affect her. I don't agree with that at all. I think when you are someone like her who actually does have influence and privilege, like, you actually more social than anybody else.
I get that. Actually, okay. I love playing devil's advocate.
No, I know, and that's why we have these conversations.
So,
but I was like, really? Just because? So you're speaking out for LGBTQ people now, but you didn't think you could because you weren't a part of that group?
I don't know, I think of her as very like a manicured appearance,
for sure.
Both like actually what she looks like, but also that the way
her
that she
package,
comes, her whole package.
Yeah.
I think it's like a politician type.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much stock to put into that, but it's an interesting quote. It's an interesting sentiment, and it could very well be that because again, if you are that popular where you're getting those notifications, you hear from vocal minority groups all the time.
Yeah.
Or at least I would expect that you would.
I mean,
to kind of stay in, but to stay in your lane.
Yeah.
So like that's the interesting thing to me, is how much can you be an advocate for something that doesn't truly affect you? You should be able to. I get it.
No, for sure.
I mean, like, if she joined a Black Lives Matter rally, I would be like, huh? That would make me think, like, okay, cool, but like it made me, I would feel weird about it. Like, why?
But why? But why?
Because she's not black, and I get it. I get supporting us, but like, it would make more sense for her to support a Me Too rally for women empowerment. Okay, cool, that makes sense. to go to for me to show up to a.
Wish she had a BLM tattoo.
Right.
Okay, that's taking it too far. No, see, but I'm going to disagree with you on that because we have to decide as a people what we want. We as Black people need to realize that we need white people for this fight.
Sure.
So if she's showing up to show support for Black Lives Matter, it might get those ignorant white people that don't really understand what Black Lives Matter is about.
I
to
get
be
it.
Like, oh,
I would.
Taylor Swift
what I'm
is
saying
supporting
is,
this. I wonder why she's supporting it. Let me look into it some more.
Sure, I get that. I'm saying I don't need her to. If she did, cool. I don't need her to.
Right.
So to me, I think her.
But they're not going to listen to us. They'll listen to her. That's why we need her to.
But I guess
that's the point.
If it made sense for Taylor Swift, if Eminem did it, it would make sense.
Because he's in that culture?
Correct.
Okay.
Taylor Swift's coming from nowhere to do that. I'm like, huh?
But like, do you? I get. Yeah.
I get you. Okay, I hear your point.
That's all I'm saying.
I hear you. I hear you.
It would have as many questions as it would be like, okay, cool.
Right.
Eminem makes sense, or like
Eminem showing up to a Me Too campaign, you'd be like,
right,
bruh.
like, what?
Yeah.
After
Why
all
are
the
you
songs,
here?
just want killing your girlfriend and all that, right?
He could have turned over a new leaf. I know.
Court mandated.
Stop.
Right.
It would be a court mandate. That's
so
hilarious.
In general, a lot of people fall into the logical fallacy of discounting the messenger, essentially.
Yep.
And that's just the source of things. This is kind of like that. But basically, if there's someone who's just a liar, they're a liar through and through, and you ask them a question, and they tell you the answer, and the answer's completely true, but you just discount it because you're just like, well, but what is your, I can't. But no, that's you should judge things on the truth of the statement itself, and that's in paralleling that would be Taylor Swift. Like, we should all be. I don't really care your reasons behind supporting Black Lives Matter or some other things, but like, good.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
It's not. It's a categorical good. One would think.
I completely agree. There's another specific situation that I recently read an article about. It was in CNN about Christian artists. And one of my favorite Christian artists, Torrin Wells, I don't know if you have ever heard. I know John has but I don't know if you've ever heard of his name. But he's started to become more mainstream. Like, he just opened up for Lionel Richie, like a Christian artist opened up for Lionel Richie. Okay. But he made the comment that he didn't feel as a Christian that he was supposed to speak out about politics because you're just supposed to support whoever God appointed in a role. And I almost threw my computer across the room because I think that is actually the complete opposite of what Christians are supposed to be doing. Christians technically should be the main people fighting for social justice because that's what Christ did in the freaking Bible. So I don't understand how people, they're like, I don't think, Christians specifically are not getting involved in politics. And I find it so ironic that the political party that has hijacked the Christianity as their main belief are complete opposite of what Christians are supposed to be doing.
Well, I know a lot of Christians believe the separation of church and state is an actual policy and don't realize it's just a letter written by Thomas Jefferson.
Right. It's not like
so. I think that's like ingrained in them to think that in terms of politics in general. So when someone asks them that question, that's the go-to. I can just pull that out and people will leave me alone. But yeah, you're supposed to be Christ-like, and Christ attacked all fronts. There was social injustice in the church, in politics, wherever else. He attacked it. And any time it raised up, he attacked it. So to hear a Christian to be like, yeah, I don't know we're supposed to do that. Like, well, what are you doing?
What do you think you're supposed to be
doing? Like, you're just singing songs and like, having communion? That's that's not being a Christian. I always thought Christian artists was such an interesting career path because it actually is kind of the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. It's the
like
complete
getting
opposite.
Money and being famous for.
I don't understand it. Like, I'm not going to be helpful here because I just don't.
No, I know. But I mean, you still go to
it.
church and you've heard of Christian artists before. I'm just curious. Do you think that they should have more of a moral responsibility to speak out against those things? Based on what Christianity actually is supposed to be.
Well, yes, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
Completely. Because Christian artists cater to Christians.
Yeah.
But being a Christian is exactly the opposite of that. You're supposed to bring people into the fold.
Yeah.
So they're supposed to be singing to non-Christians.
Yeah.
But they don't. So
they don't.
Right. So now if I have a Christian artist,
who's going to buy those albums?
Right. Exactly.
Oh, well, stream.
Right. Who's going to no buy those albums? Right, John?
Right. What's an album?
So if a Christian artist takes a stand, they're probably going to affect their Christian fan base.
Yeah.
So
right. That's a whatever, a nest of hornets or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to. I get it.
Yeah. It's just frustrating. But I do think that when you get to a certain level in any career that you're in, if you care about other people, then you need to take stances. I just think it's important.
I think it is. I think
it's
for me,
important if you're educated about it.
yeah,
I was going to say,
that's a big part of it.
And that's, I think, more so than anything else. And this is what this conversation would have probably moved to at some point. When I was wondering if you were going to say this, you had two in mind. I was like, well, what about Jenny McCarthy?
Oh Lord, yeah. I mean, she's a good example, but a horrible example. But that's what I said when I said at the beginning is that some celebrities also use their status and voice for not good.
Right.
But Karmel and I don't particularly agree about this, but I do not clearly agree with her anti-vax status, and I don't like that people are going to her for it. Like
That's the
Jenny
thing.
McCarthy. First of all, what is Jenny McCarthy famous for? Let's talk about that. Who is she even? Can you tell me? Can anybody
Really?
tell me? Yes.
But yeah, she's probably one of the top 3 or 4 Playmate models of all time.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So why
Yeah.
would I know that?
Well,
Why would I know that?
yeah.
But like, she is convinced she has an entire anti-vax community, and I don't think that's something that people should be following a celebrity for.
Yeah.
Personally, that's my stance. I know we're gonna disagree on this.
So it's because of why she's famous. So like if she was famous for
No, I don't think
No,
it's
it's
that.
not
I
even
think
that.
it's holding your. It's
'cause it's
professing
Jenny
an opinion that's based in science or pseudoscience, holding yourself out to advocate for something while not having qualifications to do that, or
Yeah.
to cause societal harm by speaking something that you don't.
Really know much about.
But now
Right.
she's not the only celebrity that has a strong anti-vax.
She's like
Stance.
the
Correct.
face of it, though.
Yeah.
Why that I don't know. But
She
that's
honestly is the face of it.
really
Yeah.
That's funny.
She's
That's
like
funny.
the main one that everyone quotes or comments about.
Right. So that's the. I mean, in my mind, there are two main. I'm sure there are more. Two main potential harms that can come from this, from a celebrity using their following as a megaphone for causes. One is they're advocating something for which they have like an interest, like a material interest. For instance, if you want Floyd Mayweather to tweet out about your cryptocurrency and say that it's the greatest thing since whatever, you can do that. You can buy a tweet from someone like him or other.
And he'll
other
tweet it
ones.
out
Right,
whether he believes it
and
or
so
not.
like in that sense, and then that person's followers like, oh well, no, he likes it. That's an endorsement deal, right? But then.
It's influencer marketing.
They've gotten better at actually regulating that to say like, hey, this is actually a paid endorsement.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Whether or not someone follows that is another thing. And the second thing is just like the Jenny McCarthy example, or someone that's purporting to have specialized knowledge, or maybe they're not even purporting to. They're just like, you know what, this is how this, and then there's a cost on society from that would not otherwise be there if this person just didn't use their voice. Again, if I have something that's completely misguided and I just say that throughout my day, I'm going to affect 10 people. I don't talk to anyone. If someone who has 50 million followers says something that's just horrific, then that can do actual harm.
For sure.
Sure. I mean, the vax is a whole nother.
It's a whole nother podcast and conversation.
Because for me, it's like there are things that have been known to affect us and harm us in our health that we for decades followed and did blindly because someone told us to do it. And now we're looking back at it and think, oh, that wasn't right. We shouldn't have said that. So I think it's on any person to do their own research. The problem is most of the populace doesn't. So whether they're listening to our president or Jenny McCarthy or anyone who believes something, if you blindly follow them, you're just going to get what you get.
Because people are lazy.
They're
Nobody
very
wants
lazy
to do the research, or they're just going to follow their favorite mommy blogger. And if she says something, then they're like, okay, then it has to be the gospel. It's like, no, look at the research, do the facts. That's the problem that I have with Trump supporters, because Trump does have a huge influence right now, and people actually aren't looking into facts. So just whatever he tweets, people take as gospel. And it's like, he's being irresponsible. One, you're the president of the United States. How, I still to this point do not know. But you're the president of the United States, and you're not realizing that every single tweet that you tweet has a consequence.
Oh, he does realize.
I think.
that.
Yeah. I was
Do you
gonna
think
say.
he realizes
Yeah.
it?
Yes.
He don't care.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
he doesn't care.
Because
Exactly.
the thing is, that's why I hate politics. For one of the major reasons is we look for the person who is the most well spoken. Like it's not. It's literally not about who is the best person to lead this country. It's
Right.
like who can say the things I want to hear the best and get me to do something.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting
interesting.
parallel because at what point does just a run of the mill celebrity? What do we have in the White House? Because
Just a run-of-the-mill
in
celebrity.
general, in other countries, you have career politicians.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's just what
Yeah.
in order to qualify for a prime ministership, you needed to come through the ranks, and for the last 15 years or so.
Hillary Clinton to me was a career politician.
Yeah.
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 And but the other thing, you could also have just an awful corrupt career politician where you could have a really
Absolutely.
misinformed celebrity.
Absolutely.
But there's no aside from being born in the U.S. and being of a certain age, you can run for president.
There's really
and
no
you can get-
criteria.
Because I
just have to raise the
I had
money.
a hot dog stand and now this is what I'm doing, or
Right.
I'm a politician, or I'm something else.
I'm Andrew Yang.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So that's the it's
Yeah.
it's an interesting. So in that sense, are we just kind of doomed?
Because
Because
yeah,
people just you vote for, you just follow.
Who you connect to.
it's. I mean,
Yeah.
it's propaganda is powerful and it works.
Mhm.
So whether it was Hitler or with Trump, it works.
It's
so
the same thing, basically.
it's the same thing. So, but what's funny is we don't. I mean, when do we see propaganda that helps us? We see stuff that's
I mean, propaganda itself, the term. I don't
the
think
term
it
is it's
has-
Yeah.
right. It has
Yeah.
a negative connotation to it. So like, if you see something or someone's telling you something, do this and do that, and it's going to help you, we're kind of like, really? But then someone else is following something that everyone else follows. That must be the right thing. So let me go with them. It's
So
a
what-
very sheepish mentality.
For sure. So I'm curious with the two of you, what does it take for you to believe or trust what like a celebrity says about something? Like, what do you look for in somebody that you follow? Because we always, we all have our own people that we're like, oh, I like what they're saying, or I trust what they're saying. Like a lot of people, like Oprah's a perfect example. If Oprah were to endorse somebody or recommend a book or, talk about social justice, people are going to be likely to want to follow what she's saying or do what she's doing. I mean, I can't even tell you how many authors she's broken careers for just because she recommended their book in a book club. Oh, Oprah said this book was good. I got to read it. It's like, you don't even like that genre, but Oprah said to read it, so you're going to read it. So I'm curious what it takes for you guys to follow what a celebrity is saying.
Peer-reviewed studies.
That would be your answer.
I like it.
That would be your
like it a lot.
answer. Peer-reviewed studies. Oh,
But I
John.
guess
like, who's a celebrity that you actually listen to?
I was gonna ask Karmel that.
Okay, who's a celebrity that you
That I listen to?
or like you're
Or-
like for me, I like what Trevor Noah has to say.
Okay, yeah.
I really like what Trevor Noah has to say.
Sure. So someone that says something regarding a current affair that I
Anything. If Trevor Noah were to be like, you know what, Bernie Sanders is the devil, I'd be like, well, shoot, maybe he is, and I'd look into it. You know what I mean? Like, he's
True.
somebody that I
Okay.
trust.
Okay.
So like, who's somebody that you trust with what they would say and what they would comment about, whether it be social justice issues or if
So I
God,
mean,
you know,
in the comedy realm, Dave Chappelle is one.
you trust him.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Partly because he put his money where his mouth is. He left comedy and took a stand against some of the things that we're now seeing coming out. That was this person got canceled with this person got canceled with that. He said, I'm going to cancel myself before this happens. So that's one person. If we're talking like Trevor Noah type personalities. There's certain writers like Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist and The Pilgrimage. Like when he says something, I'm like, okay, I haven't read his books and kind of understand how he thinks. That I think similarly. Still, I don't care who says anything. I always will research. So that's how I'm kind of different from just the regular.
But it'll
populace.
make you kind of be curious.
I'll look different at that thing. If I have a stance,
if they're saying this, if they're
I'll look
saying
at that
this, okay.
100%.
What about you, John? Can you think of anybody?
I can't. I mean, there's certain like comedians that I enjoy, but it's not.
Like, you would tend to agree with Bill Burr often.
Well, he's funny.
But he also speaks the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess it's the author you mentioned, the author, the Alchemist. There are certain people that just made me think about. Well, this person is very gifted in conveying deep messages through fiction, but I don't. What's interesting to me is those authors, contemporary authors who are still alive, which are very few that I read,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they think about of current affairs. I don't,
Right.
and I don't, I could very well agree with them, or I could not. I think of it more like music specifically with people is really strange to me because you can look at someone like you really can't tell what they're interested in. I could look at Karmel and it's like, well, you don't want to put someone in a box, but like he could very well like have a thing for classic rock. It's like, well, how did that happen? It's like,
Right.
well, when I was growing up, we went on weekend trips with my uncle. It's like,
Right.
and that's like a thing. And
Right.
there's some really interesting thing, but I would have no idea, and
No
I wouldn't
idea.
take his recommendations on certain stuff because, like, well, that's just a different thing.
Right.
So hearing someone who's really proficient and I really look out for them in whatever achievements they've had in certain fields, it doesn't translate in my mind to others.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with the president.
Right.
I'm a real estate mogul. That means that I'm qualified to
Run the country.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It could
Right.
not, but that's
Right.
not.
Like if Neil deGrasse Tyson says something regarding music or like entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, you're a nuclear physicist. Why?
Right.
Why would
But
I-
the thing is,
you know?
again,
Yeah.
but we wouldn't. We would see his tweet, right? Because people know him.
Right.
But then it would just be like, I wouldn't discount it because he's recommending Midsummer, right? It's
Right.
like, well, that doesn't have anything vaguely science related.
Yeah, for
but
sure,
then, like,
for sure.
we would check it out because, like, again, you wouldn't just immediately discount the source of it.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, on the statement of it's like, oh, Midsummer has, it treats a difficult subject matter in a nuanced way. It's like, well, yeah, I guess that's right.
Right. I think the issue that I have is that people tend to just think that whatever your niche is, that you don't have opinions or views or thoughts or feelings about anything else. Like for a scientist to recommend a movie, like that shouldn't be weird. He's a person.
Right.
Like he likes,
Yeah.
he's going to like movies.
Celebrities are people.
Celebrities are
Right.
people. And I think we have to get out of that mindset to remember, like they're also voting citizens.
Right.
So if they want to get involved in politics and speak out, they have every right to do it. It's no different if John tweets Trump is blah, 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 versus if LeBron were to tweet Trump is da 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 da.
Yeah.
I mean,
agree.
there's difference, but in the sense of just being like a voting citizen and a United States citizen, like everybody has the right to say what they feel.
Yeah, I think we just shouldn't hold people to high standards in a field that they're not in. But when they are, for example, when Wyclef's talking about things that's happening in Haiti and how he ran for office out there, okay, that makes sense to me, and that's his passion.
Because he's Asian.
Right, he's Haitian. Okay,
Right.
cool.
Right.
Now, if going back to Taylor Swift was talking about the Haitian Revolution,
I can't.
I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
It would just make me think twice. Not that it has a problem with it. I'm just like why? So I would probably not even get into her stance about it before I did the research. As why did she get into this?
I'd love nothing more than if she were into the Haitian
Just
Revolution.
totally like did a whole album
Whole
because
album,
the sales
right?
went to them. It's like, where did
Like,
this come
what?
from? And then, of course, I'm going to bring up my favorite problematic human being, Kanye. So for me, there's situations where celebrities do speak out against or for stuff, and I think it's clearly just for attention. It's like, I don't think you actually believe what you're saying, but you haven't been in the media for a while. Nobody's buying your whatever you're doing, music, and so that's what I think that this whole Trump thing was. Now I don't know. It could have been real, but now he's completely against it, and now he found the Lord. But how often do you think those situations happens where people just say stuff because they need to get attention or in the media sometimes?
I think it's often. And I think with Kanye, I didn't stand behind exactly what he said about like even slavery was a choice. I understood the context of what he was trying to convey. The problem with this, he's just all over the place. So now he's kind of discredited himself. He's lost his own validation because he's just
A mess.
he's a mess. So okay, so I back off of it, but still, that one particular thing, I was with him on that. But then I think a lot of celebrities do. Now I would hate to think it's like planned or like it's a PR stunt. But again, if the mic is there and you realize I'm kind of down right now, you can take a stand that gets people hyped about you. I see it happening. I mean, I don't. Not all people are Jesse Smollett, you know.
Thank God.
So, you know.
Also another conversation. Do you think there's anything that's kind of generic that no matter who you are, if you spoke out against it, nobody would have an issue? I can only think of one thing.
What do you mean?
Like if all celebrities spoke out against like child trafficking, like nobody's gonna.
I mean, yeah.
Sure.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
do you think there's
yeah.
any other like general issues like that where it doesn't matter who you are, what you believe, or what you do?
Poverty,
right?
I don't know about that because I fight you on poverty because
Really?
I think people don't want to close that gap.
Oh well, that's
Yeah, but
I
you
would say
can
the same
at
thing
least-
about child trafficking then too. There's a lot of, I mean,
But there's a
I think
difference
in
between
general.
be real, right?
actual feelings and then being perceived as caring about stuff.
Explain.
Well, if you don't care about closing the poverty gap, but like, who's gonna ever? It's shooting fish in a barrel. I care about closing the poverty gap. You don't care, but like you say it.
You
Like
say
you know what
it
I mean?
anyway.
That's
Yeah.
it'd be the same thing with anything else.
Which I feel like what most politicians do. Like, okay, let's pick these 3-4 things. A lot of people like that. It kind of makes sense for me to be behind all this. Okay, let's do it. And then they get into office, and then none of those things happen.
True. But what other general issues do you feel like it'd be okay for all celebrities to speak out against and they wouldn't get any backlash from other people?
Like in terms of our own society, or just in general. 'Cause I mean, like world peace and other people always been world peace
yeah,
and
but
stuff
let's
like
just think
that.
of our society. Like, if all celebrities spoke out about this one political issue, nobody would really give them any backlash about it. Be like, yeah, everybody should actually care about that.
I mean, most things.
You think most things, really?
Shelter, clean water,
Well, I think homelessness, clean water, that's a
right,
good
clean
one.
water.
food,
Yeah.
things, life, Jesus, words.
Jesus, no.
Jesus, I don't
I'm
know.
kidding.
I think it starts to get a little, lines get blurred, like when you start to bring in race, when you start to bring in
Yeah.
socioeconomics,
Yeah.
you know, which is
Because I would
crazy.
say like anyone being killed, people would be against. But like right now, people are being killed because of guns. So then that brings up gun control,
Yeah.
and then that's going to be
Exactly.
a hotbed. So no, that's
Right.
one that wouldn't be. So it's kind of like, what's the thing? I wish we could get to that point where just like looking at, it's not about who has guns, who doesn't have guns, but people are being killed. Can we
Yes.
discuss how to handle that?
Absolutely.
But it's not. It's about guns.
Yeah, and that becomes the head of the conversation,
Right.
and not innocent lives being lost. I mean, it's the same thing with police brutality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when people die at the hands of cops, it's like, well, were they immediately go to the cops' defense? It's like, well, were they listening? It's like they weren't even given a command.
Right. Did you see the video of the older white lady who went into some town hall meeting?
Yes, she was going in.
Yeah.
I loved it.
How about two cops came in her
Good
backyard?
for her. Yeah, and they didn't announce themselves.
Didn't announce themselves.
She flat
yeah.
out said, "If I were not white, I would
be dead."
probably be dead."
Yeah.
And that's sad reality.
So
But-
those white advocates, I'm all about. Taylor Swift was.
We keep bringing up Taylor Swift. This poor girl, she don't even know. That's hilarious. But now I'm like kind of wanting her to talk about Haiti.
Right?
Just because you brought it
Her and
up.
Wyclef doing those song
Oh
together?
my
It's
shit.
on.
See, don't even put that in the atmosphere because it's about to happen.
It probably would happen.
in the
Wyclef
next
needs
year,
to get out
I'm
again.
seeing Wyclef and Taylor Swift do a duet. Oh my gosh.
You didn't say what you felt, John.
About what?
Should celebrities speak out? Do they have a responsibility to?
It's up to them.
You think it's a
They
personal choice?
They can do. It's just the benefit that they can provide is outsized, and so is the harm that they can do. And it truthfully,
So they just have
it's
to
on
weigh the
them.
pros and
Yeah.
cons of that
I will
choice.
say also that like
Yeah.
when we say celebrity, like by and large, I don't think that a good chunk of them are just. How do I want to say this?
I knew what you were going to say too.
What?
Smart.
No, it's not that. No, but like a well-rounded humans. And
Gotcha.
it's not through their own fault.
Gotcha.
I think a lot of time our attention, we're just kind of basic animals a lot of times where our attention just goes to like the brightest feathered peacock in the room. Like that doesn't make that person more qualified for anything. It's just like no, they just
stand out more.
stand out. Like
Yeah.
that guy can do this thing and that's
Yeah.
incredible. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's also like when we talk about a separate question that is for another time is do you want a celebrity to be more like you or do you want to just look at them as if on a stage? Do you want them with a spotlight on them?
Right.
And that's behind the shut up and dribble stuff. That's other like you are able to do things that no one else can, and I want to just see that. I don't want you to weigh in on the Flint water crisis. I don't even want you are a separate person from me. My life sucks. I don't want you to weigh in on how things that I know about. I want you to do something else. To be more like an idol or a godlike figure or something.
Right.
That's a separate conversation.
It is, but I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's like they're still people, but people don't want to view them as people.
Yeah, I think we all need to keep in mind that we do all have freedom of speech. But at times there are ramifications for the negative that can happen when you're not thinking about others and you're only thinking about yourself.
And on that note, let us know what you think. Oh my God. I'm upset that was a perfect little ending. Let us know what you think.
Well
Make
done.
sure you
Well
subscribe,
done.
like, comment, talk to us, message us. Let us know other topics that you want us to discuss.
Love
as
us.
well. We do love
Send us
us,
some
John.
love.
Thank you, John, for joining us. And
Appreciate
we will talk to y'all next week.
Be good.
Bye.
And this episode of We Need to Talk is brought to you by Black Brew, the darkest, richest, boldest coffee anywhere.